you know, we have a bipartisan commission that's a legislative authority called the the Commission of Government Forecasting and Accountability. It's bipartisan. It's made up of 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats. In each of those, 3 are from the House, 3 are from the Senate. So it's bicameral as well as bipartisan. And they're charged with developing our revenue estimates each year that we use for our budget. And in fact, then, the enabling legislation that creates this COGFA and to set up these revenue estimates also suggests that the House and Senate should then pass a joint resolution establishing the revenue numbers that they want to use to work with on the budget.
So is this mirroring COGFA's budget?
This is. So what we have been doing and what we're suggesting that we'll be hearing today in the Revenue Committee is using COGFA's budget estimates minus, they'd included $600 million in there that's related to the federal depreciation law that was recently passed. The federal government put in place a law saying that instead of expensing over time or depreciating over time, big expenses that they do in capital equipment kinds of items, that they instead will let them expense it entirely in 1 year. So thus doing a much bigger offset on their income taxes at the federal level. Well, Illinois corporate income taxes use the federal income tax numbers as the base. So that automatically means it's going to reduce the income tax that the corporations pay here in Illinois too. Unless we take legislative action to decouple that depreciation change, we will reduce our estimated corporate income tax by about $600 million. So COGFA had assumed we were going to decouple that. Because that takes legislative action that hasn't happened yet, we're subtracting that out. Because we want these numbers not to have any gimmicks or anything like that or require any other legislative action. That number that we're now putting in there is exactly what COGFA would estimate with no legislative action would be our revenues for fiscal year 12.
Okay. And ma'am, go ahead and explain why is the Senate slightly higher than the House?
Well, the House used the Governor's Office of Management and Budget estimate as its base and then subtracted some things out. We believe COGFA has a much better track record in how they estimate. It's a bipartisan group, so I think there's more inherent buy-in and support for the COGFA numbers. They've been more accurate in at least, I think, 8 out of the 10 years historically over what the governor's revenue estimates have been. This is really what their job is. This is what they're charged with. So we're very comfortable using their numbers.
I think you've pretty much covered this, but just explain to us again, how do you compare, how does the Senate statements compare with COGFA, the House, and the governors?
Well, our revenue estimates from the COGFA numbers, our resolution is going to have a total revenue estimate of $34.3 billion. What the House COGFA's numbers was $34.8 billion, so that was higher. We subtracted out the $600 million. The House number is $33.2 billion. So that's the lowest of the estimates, and what the governor's office had done was about $34 billion. What the House did was use the governor's office estimates and subtracted out some items. We use COGFA's. We think that's a bipartisan group. When we met with them, we had our Republican colleagues, as well as myself and my co-chair, Dan Katowski, met with COGFA, Dan Long, and went over the revenue estimates, and they made enormous sense the way they've gone about it. Dan Long himself believes that they were conservative, in his words, estimates as well. So we saw no reason not to go with theirs.
To you, ma'am, what does it mean that all 4 groups have different projections?
Well, what we're hoping to pass here, that we'll be hearing in Revenue Committee today, is a Senate joint resolution. So we will be passing it out of the Senate, hopefully, and sending it to the House. And then the House may or may not decide to take that up and reconsider the numbers they're using. I'm not sure. They may not. If, in fact, they don't, we'll develop budgets that won't entirely match, and then we'll go to conference committee and have to work it out, what we want to actually have for our final budget that we bring back to pass.
And do you hope the Senate budget would avoid cuts?
Well, the Senate budget is going to have to make cuts. I think under any scenario we need to be making significant cuts, and that's not a fun position to be in. And so we're not trying to avoid that. We know we need to be doing that. This number, we will be making cuts below what the governor's proposal was as well. His budget had some cuts, but overall an increase in other areas as well. We think the governor's proposed budget was out of balance by close to $1.5 billion, so we think there are additional cuts that need to be made.
Is there anything else, Sandra, you'd like to add regarding your bill?
No, I appreciate the interest in this, and I'm hoping that we can end up being in a position where we'll have full support in the Senate for this. We'll have to see. I'm not sure exactly where the Republicans are going to be on this. I would say it's a very You know, the primary difference between the COGFA's estimates and the governor's estimates, there's two primary differences in why, and first of all, the governor's office did it earlier too than COGFA. COGFA's came in later. And there were two primary drivers, just if people are interested in what the differences are between their estimates. One was timing issues on how we collect the new revenues from the income tax increase. COGFA thinks there's going to be a timing issue. We won't collect all the new revenues due in this current fiscal year, this year, because it takes a while to implement. So that some of the additional revenue COGFA estimates is that we're not really going to collect it this year, we're going to collect it next year. I think there's probably general agreement that that's going to be the case, that there is going to be a timing lag. The second piece was that there was a slight difference in the growth projection that they used in corporate and personal income taxes. COGFA was using 3.1% in growth. We have the governor's office used 2.7%. So that's really the only other difference that could be debated. COGFA seems to think their projections are conservative, and we were just comfortable going with that.
Okay, thank you so